You want to make lo-fi, but you don't want to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on plugins. Don't worry, I got you. Lo-fi has changed the internet's music landscape with hundreds of thousands of people listening every day. And today, you're gonna learn how to make it. This video is gonna be split into 3 parts, beginning with the most boring part and ending with the most fun and interesting and arguably the most important part. Wait. Don't click off just yet. Just hear me out. I know that 99% of producers are going to click off as soon as they hear the word theory. I know that that's scary, but I promise to keep this part as short as possible, only giving you the highlight reel so that you can make the best lo-fi possible. Lo-fi music is heavily influenced by jazz. Now, this should come as no surprise. What is surprising though is the amount of influence we can take from that to apply to our own lo-fi music today. There are 2 specific pieces of theory that we're going to talk about today that are going to help us write better lo-fi music: the Dilla feel and the power of sevens. Jay Dilla was a producer in the late 90s and early 2000s. He's best known for his unique jazz-style production along with his disregard of quantization, which gave his music a unique feel that other producers just didn't have at the time. But today we're going to focus on one specific aspect: the drums. More specific than that, the rhythm. Some might say the feel is arguably the most important part of lo-fi music, and I think I agree. 2 main factors that build that feel are the rhythm and the chords. Jay Dilla, being the innovator of rhythm that he was, is going to act as our guide today as we discover what kind of swing and vibe we want our song to be. The triplet swing is one of, if not the most popular rhythm in lo-fi music. In fact, I would bet if you went onto Lo-Fi Girl's stream right now and listened to the song, you might hear this exact rhythm. This type of drunken, slow-down, catch-up feel to the drums is sometimes referred to as the Dilla feel. Next, let's talk about the chords. We'll keep this one really short, I promise. Lo-fi music takes a lot of inspiration from jazz. We already knew that. It's just a simpler version of jazz. So specifically, we're talking about 7th chords, and making 7th chords is actually pretty easy. It's not that hard at all. We'll show you here. Let's start in the key of C major. If we want to add a 7th, all we have to do is go up within the C major scale 7 spots. Starting with the root note, which in this case, because it's a C major chord, is the C. You can do this with really any chord as long as you count up within the notes that are in the key. For example, let's do it again here with D. And once again, we have a 7th chord. And now you know how to create what a lot of people call the lo-fi aesthetic. Finding inspiration for me is a lot of just finding a sound that I like. I usually start with the In Memoriam preset from Omnisphere, and then I'll tweak it a little bit until I find something that I really enjoy. But because today we're using only stock and only free plugins, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Today I'll be starting off with a free lo-fi plugin that I use called Room Piano. It's a great plugin, and before I got any of the synths that I have today, I actually used to use this plugin all the time. I'll leave the link down below. So let's get started with some chords. Now, if you're having troubles thinking of any chords or you don't really know how to write a chord progression, that's okay, because there's this really great website called Hook Theory, which I use a lot of times to get inspiration if I'm stuck. Some of the things you can do is you can actually go on there and you can find a popular chord progression from a song that you like, take those chords and then change them up so that they actually have that lo-fi feel we were talking about earlier. So you can add 7th chords to them, you can change the key up or down, things like that to really give it the feel that you want for your song. And if you're curious, this is what people mean when they say steal like an artist. So before we actually breathe life into our music, we're gonna give it a heartbeat. And that starts here with the triplet swing that you definitely did not skip over earlier because it was in the theory part of the video. So if you draw it into your DAW, it might look something like this. I chose to put the swing on the hi-hat, but you can really do it however you like. You also in Logic have the option to highlight everything and choose swing. So you can actually use that as well and change the quantization on the side to give it that feel. So now that we have a good solid base for our song, we're gonna move on to the last part of the video that's gonna talk about mixing, finalizing things, and really creating a song that flows and breathes. Let's begin by looking at the chords that I took originally. They're very simple, they're very straightforward, nothing too crazy about them. And then I turned them into these chords, which are 7th chords. I think the last one is like a suspended chord. And then here we have the Dilla feel with that triplet swing. Da, 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 da. 1, 1, 2, 3. You hear that? And then, of course, with every lo-fi song, we have to have that nice EQ, cutting all the highs out, giving us that very warm mid. Oh, and this is a very important part here. This part, what I'm doing is I'm doing something called side chaining. Side chaining is when you take a sound and have that sound trigger another sound's volume, or more specifically, the compression on another sound. What's really important in lo-fi is that the kick cuts right through the mix. We need that real strong heartbeat. So it's very important when you're making lo-fi music, anything that is a pad or very spacey and takes up tons of space in the mix, you want that side chain to the kick. So it's really easy to do, but you want to make sure that when the kick hits, the volume comes down and then back up. You can change the attack and release to decide how fast it comes and it attacks, like how quickly it turns down, and the release, which is how quickly or slowly it turns back up. I like to have it so it's evident. I don't like it to snap. I like it to kind of go like a little bit slow. You can see that. I don't know why I'm trying to fly. So this plugin is called Vinyl. It's by Isotope and is a free plugin. I will link it in the description below. It is super important to have plugins like these when you're making lo-fi music. In my opinion, if you do decide to buy any plugins, I recommend buying the RC20. If you're into making lo-fi, it's kind of like the plugin. Like, this is where I start experimenting with different sounds to see if I can write out a lead part. Obviously, I'm not gonna settle on this one. This one is way too abrupt, but I thought the sound just sounded hilarious. Kind of like a video game bebop, like a Game Boy sound or something, I don't know. So instead of actually designing the lead, which I initially decided to do, I actually went and took the pad. It's a preset. I didn't really change a lot to do with it, just slight tweaks here and there, so it didn't sound so abrupt and harsh, so it kind of swelled in and swelled out nice and slowly, giving it that big background feel that we want from a pad, because we really want pads. Pads are one of those things where when you use them, they shouldn't be noticeable, but if they aren't there, you should be able to hear it. So it's not something that like you should be able to notice that it's there and be like, oh, there's a pad there, but you should know when it's not there. And then I decided to add an 808 here, just a simple 808, but I went in and redesigned it again because I actually like chorus on my basses. I really like putting that weird effect. I heard it once in like a funk song like 3 years ago, and I just do it all the time now. Whenever I'm writing like lo-fi music or music that like allows you that space with the 808, always put a chorus on it. But that's just personal taste. Here what's happening is I'm actually cutting the bass so that it hits every time the kick hits. Now this is actually a very important step that a lot of people miss when they're producing. This is not just a lo-fi thing. You should do this with all of your music. If you're writing hip hop, if you're writing trap music, if you're writing a lot of pop music, almost always you kind of want this to happen. It gives the bass that sort of like bump to it, unless the music doesn't call for it. But usually you want the 808 and the kick to be kind of in sync, or at least sort of married to each other rhythmically. Finally, I've decided I want to actually make the lead this time. So this is me designing the lead using a retro synth, which is in Logic. It's a stock plugin. I love this plugin. It's pretty simple, so it's not super overwhelming. Like Alchemy can be a lot when you start using it. And I knew that I wanted like an old-fashioned sound. I just didn't know how I wanted to do it yet. So I kind of just decided to go into the retro synth and just mess around and see what happened. And I ended up with something pretty spacey, very 80s like, very vibey. Almost like synth wavy. And here I'm sort of designing it. So I have an intro now where the piano comes in, and then we have some claps with a snare that also come in while the intro's happening. One thing that I like to do, especially when making lo-fi, is I like to use ping pong delays, which basically means that the sound, the delay, goes from one ear into the next and back and forth until it slowly fades out. I really think it sounds nice. I think it gives a very unique texture to the sounds. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an actual ping pong delay within Logic. I didn't really look for a free one. I'm sure you could find one. And if you do, link it to me. Let me know. I'd love to see it. But what I did here is I just had it set so that one was going at 1/8 notes and one was going at 1/4 notes. So they did kind of go at separate times. And it gave a ping pong effect, which I was actually happy with. But it took me a while to get there. And unfortunately, I didn't really find anything that I liked other than the waves delay, which I normally use for a ping pong delay. Here we get that second 808 on top of the first 808, that layer, which is really, really important if you want to have a very wide sounding bass. I usually like to have a sub bass, so a very low rounded bass, and then a more thinner, sometimes distorted bass, which is kind of what I did here. Another important thing that I think I forgot to mention earlier is I also will cut all of the lows out of every instrument except for the kick and the bass. Now, obviously there are exceptions where you shouldn't do this, but I find that almost always it is better to cut the lows a little bit too much than it is to leave them in. They muddy the mix, they make it all sound janky. And honestly, if you don't do this, you should just try it, because you will be surprised at how much cleaner your mix sounds after just chopping out those lows. It's actually genuinely impressive. So what happened here was I actually copied the main melody because I knew that I wanted to have a sort of down moment within the song so that I could bring it back up and end it. And this is what when I say breathe life into the music, this is kind of what I mean. You want it to flow. I also like to use a lot of automation, but because lo-fi is so simple, I tend to not do a lot of automation with this. But we want to breathe that life. So we want to have the song actually tell a story and move, right? So I have a part here. I knew I wanted it to be quiet. What I did is I actually accidentally put it on a percussion setting. And I really, really liked how it sounded. So I just left it in, and then I edited it and put a flute sound, which we're going to hear in a second. That is another stock sound. Every sound in here is stock or used free plugins. I add a harmony here once again so that we have that flow, and then we can have somewhere to look forward to and something to rise into rather than having it just be the same thing. You should always be looking to improve or grow parts of your song into something else. And then finally, I did decide actually that I wanted to try putting an organ sound in, which I tried penning to the other side. I stopped recording when I did this because I listened to it after on my phone, and it sounded bad. So I went back, and what I did is I actually turned down the organ, and then I turned the other melody we written earlier, the like 80s style reverb melody. I turned that guy back up because I thought that sounded a bit better. Yeah, that's it. So this is the final product. Now you guys know everything I know about making lo-fi. If you guys want me to make another video with my plugins that are actually paid for, I would love to do that. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, if you want to see more tutorials, music stuff, art stuff, I don't know, just whatever is gonna happen, I guess, then please consider subscribing. And thank you so much. Until next time, goodbye.